Welcome back, folks. Hope this video finds you well and that your physical health is better than mine right now. I'm still battling the cold. It's only a couple hours after I recorded the other video, so it's not that big a deal. Anyway, that said, we are going into Module 4. And Module 4 is relatively new in speaking about the ACE study and just overcoming child trauma. And so it means a lot to this course since it's overcoming child trauma. We're talking about resiliency. You know, when bad things happen, how do people, overcome them? So that said, I want to give you just a tail end of the ACE study and then moving forward. So one of the, I mentioned I got to meet Dr. Felitti, one of the primary authors of the ACE study. Went up and shook his hand. I was kind of in awe because I'd really kind of gotten into this. This was back in 2013. Really gotten into the study and trying to help the clinicians become more aware of the impact of trauma, and not to get too tied up into diagnoses and more into relationships and more into how to help people from where they were, then, and not so much, well, they've got, a conduct disorder, if they've got oppositional defiant. Well, diagnoses are great, but they just describe behaviors. They don't give you the etiology. One of the few, there's only a couple, I think, that give you an etiology, and that would be PTSD, maybe 3, reactive attachment disorder, and then also a schizophrenia. You have those disorders actually name the etiology, the source, the what is behind the disorder. Otherwise, even disorders like depression just describe symptoms. They don't tell you why. Well, somebody says, well, there's serotonin imbalance. Yeah, but people can have life events that impact their serotonin imbalance. It's not just a serotonin imbalance. So let's move forward in this. I talked to him a little bit, and he really didn't care too much about psychology. He was really focused in on the medical aspects, the healthcare aspects, just because of the amount of money that we spend on, people's health, when we could be helping kids go through and live better lives, and then therefore prevent billions of dollars, trillions of dollars worth of healthcare expenses and countless levels of immeasurable human suffering. That said, I did hear him talk about his study, and he's, from his own words, said that we didn't offer anybody treatment. We didn't offer, when we first did these patient interviews, we did, many rounds of interviews with patients about, their adverse experiences. This is back in the 90s, when they first did their study. And they said they controlled for every other factor. And so they looked at the folks that they interviewed, and they talked to them about their adverse childhood experiences. And their hospital expenses dropped in half, and considered, when you consider the rest of the people that were in the study. Their medication, the amount of money they spent on medication dropped in half. The number of doctor visits is decreased significantly. And the only factor that they found that was contributing to this was the very notion of them talking and have somebody listening to them about what happened to them. Now, they didn't get treatment. It wasn't therapy. It was just them going in and talking to a researcher about their adverse childhood events. And just by the very function of them talking about it, reduced their healthcare costs. And so they didn't do like the depression measures or PTSD measures or anything like that. But one could, extrapolate from that very, very concrete measurement of number of times you visit a doctor or ER, and your amount of medications, hospital visits, all that decreases. You can go by, association for sure that their mental health was better. So it's we're talking about resilience, and that's the one ingredient I didn't mention there, which is having I did mention it, having another person listen, is what we're going to really focus on in resilience. And so here's our chapter outline. Let me pull this back in so you can see me. Sorry about that. Can I make it a little bigger? Okay, cool. not that I want to see myself, but I figure you probably want to see what my expressions are. So let's go over the outline real quick, and then let's jump into Module 4. So here's the outline for Module 4. Oh, come on, computer. I live in Oklahoma. Okay, I was like, our higher ed doesn't get funded very well. My computer's pretty old. Okay, so the reading assignments, these are actually, a lot of your assignments are going to be, again, this video reflecting on the PowerPoint that I create and some of those, and also, you know, I given, you know, you can go get her, I toyed with her book, but I think that we can pretty much cover a lot of what she's talking about here in a shorter amount of time than having you get a supplemental text. So I did give a YouTube resource. I have this listed under a module as well. Chapter 2 is actually going to help you more. It talks more about diagnosing. It's going to help you more for Module 5, but you should be aware of it and take care of it. Here's our video lecture. And so I'll go into the outline in just a moment. We do have a quiz to do for this chapter. So you have 2 quizzes this week. They're not very long. Don't freak out about them. I just want you to kind of go in and digest and wrestle with the information a little bit. Here are your discussion board posts. And so pay attention to what those are. That's your activity. Okay, going back into the module, here is an outline. And the lecture, I'm going to save that. It's really brief. I'm going to cover it in the PowerPoint. There's the lecture quiz. There's the discussion. Here are a lot of videos. They're not very long. You can see this one's 4.5 minutes. This one's 2.5 minutes. This one's 2.5 minutes. You know, I realize, you know, you got just sit around watching videos the whole time. Although that's, you know, that's YouTube's a fun resource, and if you could just sit around and watch YouTube and TED Talks all day, I think we'd all be better off, right? All right, let's move forward. So here's the PowerPoint, and let's pull this up. Take a look at this. Talking about resilience, and you know what? While I'm thinking about it, before I get into all this, I'm gonna break this because I didn't put it. I looked for it, you know, and I didn't put it in here. But the lecture used to stop on ACEs. Come on, focus again. Here we go. You weren't focused. That's why I did that. Just kidding. The lecture used to stop with all of those horrible slides showing all of these horrible health outcomes. And you know, like the one thing with six or more ACEs, you're like 20 years. There's like 20-year lifespan decrease. And I used to, you know, back in 2013, even when I met Dr. Falady, I was like, this guy's kind of like Dr. Death. I mean, this is like just the horrible outcomes. And even when I talk in a community, it'd be like, you know, you end on that. It's like, yeah, we really need to prevent it, but everybody kind of walks away and they're like, golly, these are just depressing statistics, and oh, my heart goes out to people. But man, what do we? This is an intractable social problem. What do we do? And that really is what the focus, I think, with the original ACE is, just to really, you know, prevent, you know, childhood neglect, abuse, you know, horrible experiences. But the research on resilience is really where the focus needs to be. I mean, you can get those factors in on this resilience, because the things we're going to talk about for resilience are the things that help prevent the ACEs in the first place. And so when I first started encountering, and actually I have to attribute this to a student. So I mentioned in a lecture before that what you share is important. What you share is very important. You know, I remember I taught a childhood development class back in 2013, 2014, I think it was 2014. And I was, you know, talking about ACEs, you know, as a comprehensive development class. And so, you know, normally people, when we talk about them, are like, wow, where's this been? I didn't know this. This has been, and really, I think that's how most people still encounter the information. It's like, wow, this makes so much sense. Why hasn't this been out there? the one student in particular is like, what do I do? I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be, she might have been, she's in the school counseling track. So she's like, I'm going to be, in the schools. What do I do? She found that year, she found a research article where people had done experiments with mice and rodents. And so she looked into this and she said, well, they found a way to mitigate ACEs. And she was giving this, each one of the students had to give like a video, like each one of you are going to give a video presentation at one point. Okay, and then we'll go over that later. But she was giving her presentation and she's talking about this. And I'm like, wait a minute, ways to mitigate ACEs through mice studies. So wait, come again? What are you talking about? So she goes into this detail about this study that talked about researchers noting a brain chemical named, or I guess it might be even considered a hormone named oxytocin. And so oxytocin, if you know about oxytocin, it is released during very close bonding experiences in humans, and also other animals. The little mice or mammals. So some of the same neurochemical structures and neurochemical processes that are going on. And so they did this research, and so the mice, they actually were like, they hypothesized if they give them oxytocin, it would mitigate the bad effects of cortisol. The deleterious effects, the neurotoxic effects of cortisol. So they actually injected mice with oxytocin, and it was shown to promote neurogenesis, to promote brain growth, to actually mitigate the effects of cortisol. It's like, okay, well, we found the bullet that was causing all the damage, and now we found it. I mean, honestly, it's like the cure. I was like, okay, wow, this is amazing. And so when you look at when oxytocin's released, it's released in really close bonding experiences, and in like a mother-child type of even bond. There's a lot of oxytocin that's released there, and it's really a neurally protective chemical that's present. And so they, one of the students jokes, well, yeah, we just need to go around and, hit kids that have been through a lot with like this dart, with this oxytocin, magic dart, so they've actually, I just found this out right before this lecture. There were trials in Europe about an oxytocin nose spray to treat PTSD, and there's some evidence of efficacy. And so, yeah, it's just like two steps. I mean, of course, we didn't do it here in the United States, right? But anyway, that's interesting. That's out there for folks. And that's something that I didn't plan to put in this course because it's not in any of my lecture material. But I wanted to share that before I got into this. Because really, we're not going to be as therapists out there shooting oxytocin or going around with a dart, making sure this chemical gets into people to assuage the effects of the bad effects of cortisol and PTSD and all these adverse childhood experiences. But what we can do is we can ensure that these things, and that's what would be the point of your discussion here, is what do we do as therapists to promote resiliency. And the first thing that we do is not do what our insurance companies would have us do, and have somebody come in and first of all, let's pull out our book and see what's wrong with you. What label can I put on you? No, we want to. It's what you're going to be trained to do. It's what we're trained to do. We got to get paid, so let's make sure we can put a label on somebody. But really, what happened? Let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about what your experiences were. And so there was a researcher by the name of Bernard, 1995. As it's a research, a little older now, but she noted she studied kids that had, even before ACE had come out. She studied kids that had been through really terrible circumstances. And, you know, like many of you noted in your own discussions this first week, you know, even though the risks are higher that somebody could not succeed or have all these bad things happen to them, you know, perpetuating the ACEs, there are a lot of folks that come through and they're resilient. They show strength. And so she thought we need to focus on those folks even before, you know, we came out with this big, you know, epidemiological study. She picked out 4 attributes that children had that were resilient, that were, you know, like the rubber band, it, you know, could be stretched but still not break. And so social competence was one of these, the ability to have positive relationships with others, problem-solving skills, you know, being able to perceive yourself as being in control and finding resources to, you know, help and fix problems. Then autonomy, you know, a sense of being in control. Think about self-efficacy and Bandura's, you know, concept of self-efficacy with this, you know, ability to exert some influence over the environment, have some control. If you're completely helpless, obviously that's, you know, not a good feeling. And then a sense of purpose and future. So kind of goal-directed behavior, you know, a sense of, you know, what will happen, that I'm going to overcome this. And so I share a couple of resilient stories, and then that's a common theme. And those are extra. So these are internal kind of attributes, you know, the attributes of resilience, the internal traits of kids that have resilience. But there's a lot that comes from the outside, the external world, that either instills or dissuades those attributes of resilience. The game that was mentioned in week 1 about brain architecture, the brain architecture game, I hope that people go back and look and click on that resource, because it's very helpful. It's very helpful. It's an experiential way of learning about brain architecture and how to really support, you know, the ability to withstand stress and the ability to be resilient later in life. And so you'll notice that Ann Maston here, this is from her book Ordinary Magic of 2009. I also have a resource for you to watch from her on the module. But she lists these in order of what she found. And if you'll notice, effective parents and caregivers are number 1. Number 2, connections to other competent adults. Pro-social competent peers and friends, you know, the good peer group. You look at counseling. Counseling is like, it's like way down here, 4 through 7. You know, problem-solving skills, self-regulation skills, positive beliefs about self, beliefs that life has meaning. Those are areas that we deal with. You know, faith group, spirituality, religious affiliations. You know, somebody mentioned socioeconomic advantage. It's in here. It's important to have enough to live, but it's not number 1. Effective schools and teachers and safe, effective communities. Each one of these, if you can put these in place, this builds resilience. This builds resilience. I can tell you, in my own experience, in working with people, one of these stands out head and shoulders way above the others. And a couple of you have alluded to this earlier in your discussions this past week. I'm not going to name it, but I can tell you that if this one particular attribute, this one particular external support has been in place, I can unequivocally say that, yes, there were positive outcomes. Things worked out. Things, you know, this person didn't go to jail. This person didn't meet an early demise. This person, you know, didn't develop all these. There's one of these that's more important than others, and that's really what I want you to focus on in your discussion and in your talks this week. So I've got some more videos here. Some of these may be overlapping with the ones I've shared online. And then here, if you're interested in doing more, Angel Novaric is actually on the board of she's one of our professors here at Adams of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. This is a wealth of resources. So this offers, it doesn't matter what, you know, whether you're a school counselor, you're in a school setting, whether you're in a community mental health setting. Oh my goodness. if you drill down into this, so there we've got, look, trauma treatments. Like we're gonna focus on that later. This has so much information. This, if you drill into this site, so good, such a good resource. We don't have time but just play around, just go look and see what's in here. Very, very good resource. This actually needs to say this, okay? So if you're going to pull up an error if you don't do this. This actually gives you the pre-training for TFCBT. So if you're going to be a certified in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, you have to do this 10-hour web training. It's actually pretty good. It's kind of interactive. And so it talks about what we'll do in TFCBT. We'll go over this. We'll talk about this in more detail later. Let's see here. One more. This is, I think, just from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Let me see here. Or maybe it's just the American Psychiatric Association. It will come up slowly. American Psychological Association. Okay. Dang it, those dang acronyms. But this also gives you some resources. So, so that being said, let me stop my share here. Okay. So you'll have a discussion board post again this week. Be thinking about how, all these various ways, and think about all of the. I tried not to give it away. I think the answer is still pretty obvious about what is the most important factor in establishing resilience. Now there are others that are still important. Doesn't mean that just one is important, but one is more important than the others. And so, so think about that. Think about what you can do as a therapist to help promote resilience. And I look forward to reading your responses this week. Take care.